it's Nancy Maddox from WYTV7 in Charlotte, North Carolina, as well as on iHeartRadio. And I'm here today to do an interview with a very, very special gentleman that I've known for quite a few years. He and I have met several times together, and I'm real excited with what he's got to talk to us about. His name is Darren Tate. He's from Memphis, Tennessee. Very knowledgeable on some information that he's going to share today with us that he's researched for several years now, so he can have all of the facts. I think you're going to be really interested in this. This is a more serious show than we're used to doing, but I think it's very vital information that you're going to need for the future. So Darren is also a pastor. So when he starts getting on his preaching, that's because he's got a pastor background too. He's had a church before, so you'll hear that in his voice. But anyway, what we're going to talk about today is the hardcore facts of the financial strength of the United States versus America. And Darren's going to lead us down a road that talks about the difference in the United States and the difference in America, the collapse of the dollar, how it's going to affect us, how IRS is turning into the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, and a lot of things about Supreme Court rulings and things like that. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Darren Tate. And Darren, will you just kind of give us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and what you do and your background?
Well, first of all, hello, dear. How are you? It's good to see you. You look amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, well, here in the Memphis area, as you alluded to earlier, I have pastored. I got my doctorate in divinity back in 1996, from Arkansas School of Theology. And since then, I've done a lot of ministry. I've had been afforded the opportunity to travel a lot of places. I've been the first for the sake of understanding African American, because it's not the proper term. But however, so that the listener, I won't lose the listeners. I have been the first African American to speak over in Wales and Prestatyn. I got a chance to see the castles where Princess Diana and all them. So God has been gracious towards me. And right now I'm a broker. By trade. That's how I help people. That's a ministry for me as well, particularly helping our senior citizens around the age of 65 and up. But of course, I can help anybody. And I also help people with their finances as it pertains to credit. So we help people with the credit, understanding the laws of credit, understanding things such as CPN, the legalities of CPNs, different things, because a lot of people are afraid. And when you don't know of something, you kind of afraid of it. You kind of steer away from it. And a lot of what we don't know has really been harmful to us, as the Bible suggests, and it says that my people perish for a lack of knowledge. So you might hear me say that, more than one time on this show, but people perish for a lack of knowledge. So just because you don't know, and some of the things that we're about to dive into, just because you haven't heard about it, and I'm speaking to that listener, that may be listening or even watching later on, just because you haven't heard about it does not make this information not true.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And I thank you for that, but I'm going to grab you on some of these acronyms that you're using, because obviously people don't know what CPN means, okay? Can you kind of tell us what that means?
It's a credit protection number, or it also is known as a credit privacy number. Now, I've seen it on the news. I've seen it in some social media sites where they say it is illegal, and that is totally false. It is very legal to obtain a CPN. Now, a CPN, once again, being a credit privacy number or a credit protection number, it is designed to protect your identity. The law states that you do not have to disclose your Social Security number to anybody except for a government facility or entity or passive government. And I spoke on this the other night. With the passive government, what I mean by that would be a job, because of course you got to pay taxes on your wages, which is illegal, and we'll talk about that later. But however, for the sake of again conversation, you got to pay taxes on your your wages. So you have to report and use your social. You can't use a CPN. You cannot use a CPN for government-funded programs like FHA if you want to buy a home, and they're buying your buy-in down. So instead of paying 20%, the government gives you a 15% credit through a government-funded program, so you only have to pay 5%. Well, if you're going to use a government-funded program to get to lower your down payment in a home, you cannot use a CPN. It has to be a Social Security number. But for the purposes of credit, dealing with entities such as credit cards, and that's with major banks as well. If you're using a CPN for the purpose of buying a car, for leasing or renting a home, you can even buy a home, again, as long as you're not using government funds. You can use private banks such as credit unions who are not using FHA funds to buy your buy-in down. And you can also, you can pretty much do everything you would with your social, but do not let people tell you that you have to use your social because you're applying for an apartment. No, you're giving them your CPN.
Is it the same? And does it look like a social? Is it like the same number of digits and all of that?
It has the same algorithms as the Social Security does. It just doesn't have Social Security benefits. And the reason why is the government can only do business with corporations, and you are a corporation. And so if you look on at some Social Security numbers, when your name is displayed, it has it in proper print, but most of us, our names in all caps. But really on a Social Security card, it really doesn't matter. But whenever you're dealing with the government doesn't deal with humans. The government deals with corporations. So we know that we all have a fictitious entity that has been created in our name at our birthday, and generally about the second day. So they create a fictitious government, or a fictitious entity rather, with your name in all caps. So that's the person they deal with. So if you look at your light bill, your insurance bill, your any bill that correspondence that you get from credit cards, even on your credit card printed, your name is in all caps. So with that being the case, they're dealing with the corporation and not the human. So that's why you can only use your Social Security number when you're dealing with the government.
Wow. And I'm looking at my Social Security number right now. I pulled it out because I've listened to you enough to know that we're going to delve real into our Social Security numbers and what they mean in our cards. And sure enough, mine is in all caps. I mean, I have the regular Social Security card right here. And then I also have the one that I was issued probably 55 years ago when I was 10 years old, that looks like this. And this one doesn't even have Social Security Administration on it except written at the bottom. Okay, wow. And it's got the same verbiage on the back, but we're going to talk a little bit more about those Social Security cards. But that's interesting. So if I were to apply for a CPN, it would be just like another Social Security number for me. That's legal, that I could use for credit purposes, which means I'd get better rates because there wouldn't be any bad credit in it, or there wouldn't be any collections or bankruptcies or anything like that listed under that Social Security number. That's
absolutely.
CPN.
It's the quickest way to, if there's any such thing as real credit repair, it's the quickest way to restoring your credit. I have a company that helps people to obtain CPNs, and my slogan with the company is giving you a second chance to make a first impression. Wow. So this is a second chance in life to giving you a first impression, because most people that you'll be dealing with, they have never seen you before, so they don't know what's on your social, but they see what's on your CPN. So we can create a whole new you lawfully, and the FBI backs this up. You can go to the FBI website and type in CPN, and then it actually let you know that it is legal. I can almost quote it verbatim, but it says that it is currently legal to obtain a CPN for the purposes of credit. Now,
Darren, I have a question on that. Do you know how a lot of companies are using our Social Security numbers to grade us or rate us, even if it's not credit, like insurance companies? If you apply for car insurance, they will rate you up if you have bad credit. So would that CPN work for car insurance and life insurance and those entities like that?
The CPN will definitely work with that as well. Yes, ma'am. Again, as long as it's not a government-funded program, CPN can be used in any of those entities.
See, and haven't quite understood that. I've been in the insurance business now for probably 15 years since I've retired from the credit union. But every time I'm in the business and we try to, they have rates that they set for people that don't have so good credit. They call them a risk. And I'm like, what does your credit have to do with you trying to get car insurance or life insurance? What does it have to do with it? And so that's one thing that really makes me stand awake when I hear you talk and things that you're talking about, because I just think it's important for people to understand that. But we only have 30 minutes, so I really don't want to move on because we have some really important stuff to share with you that Darren shares on a regular basis, and we're going to get his contact information at the end. And I want you to go on to his Facebook and watch his speeches, watch his Facebook Live, his things that he talks about, because it's critically important that we pay attention now, especially in the financial environment that we're in right now with our country, and nationally and internationally. So Darren, will you talk a little bit about what you've been talking about in the difference in the United States and America? Because we all, as normal people, just think it's synonymous. You know, one day we'll use United States, one day we'll use America. And a lot of the differences in those two makes a difference in the monetary system of the value of the dollar, right?
Right. You know, and I'm glad that we started off right there, because United States is not America. And we have to preface the conversation with that information to set the foundation by which we can build on. United States is not America. That's why the key word here is of America, but it's not America. So once we understand that, then who was the United States then? United States is a privatized business. It's a business. It's a major corporation. It's a major corporation, and you can look them up on DunandBradstreet.com, and you can type their name in, and you can actually see they have several Dun & Bradstreet numbers. Now, for the listeners that may not understand Dun & Bradstreet, just like you and I have credit monitors by the names of TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, corporations or businesses that are incorporated alike, whether they're major or whether they're minor, if they have a Dun & Bradstreet number, that company monitors the credit of that particular company, and it displays their credit worthiness to those who would like to do business with them on a larger scale. So understanding that the U.S. is a company, it is a privatized business that operates in America or of America.
And who owns that company, Darren?
Well, there are several, but we got to go back to Jekyll Island, when the 6 people that met on this Jekyll Island to come up with a centralized banking system to enslave all of us. And so, and I'm not going to be able to get in depth as much as I would like to because of the time frame that we're on. I know we want to touch on some other things. But when we go back there, we have to look at the Rothschild family. Most of us have heard about the Rockefellers, you know, and that's on a lower tier. But when we want to talk about the powers, the real powers that be, the Rothschild family is one of the most, actually, if I read correctly, the most powerful family on the planet. You know, they have partnered with other families, of course, but there are basically about 7 families that pretty much run this planet. But they have mastermindfully have put us all in slavery, and this has nothing to do with color, but everything to do with classism. And they have used us as collateral to debts that this business has created. Now, we understand the money that we call money is really not money. It's fiat currency. It's nothing but paper that has perceived value. Okay, so a dollar is no different from 100. It's the perception, because there's more zeros behind that one, that it has more value, and we use it as more value in this current system that we have been inducted in. But by when you look at it, again, 1933 was a very pivotal time period for America, being that, you know, when Lincoln was killed, and we understand that Lincoln was the last president that we ever had. I like to mess with people a lot of times. I asked them, who was the last president of the United States? And they look at me like, duh. Obama. You know, I'm like, duh, you're wrong, you know. So, and I do it in fun, but it kind of engages them into a conversation where I can go into and give them a little history on the difference between America and United States. The last president of America was actually President Lincoln. Everybody else has been the president of United States, Inc.
Wow. So United States of America is an entity. It's a company that's owned by 6 wealthy families.
Yes.
And they actually started the banking system too, right? For the Federal Reserve Bank, which is supposed to be the national banking system.
Right.
That's pretty scary. But if you think about it, when President Lincoln was, before he was assassinated, he was the president of America, right?
Right.
And then after he was assassinated, all the presidents after that were the presidents of the United States of America, which is a private entity.
Right. And they had to do that because President Lincoln, before he saw what the banksters, we call them banksters. Now, it's the same thing as modern day gangsters. Gangsters is a lower tier derivative of the banksters. And the banksters were the original gangsters. So I'm just trying to keep everybody on the same wave here. And those banksters, you know, when he saw what they were doing, what they were trying to do, with the removal of the gold and the removal of the silver, bankrupting, you know, America, that they had to create a fictitious entity, and that's why our money is fake. All of these, the presidents, you know, all this stuff is fake. But we've been forced to consent to it because we've been made to believe that it's real. And President Lincoln was murdered for that. But before he got murdered, he actually declared martial law. So when martial law is declared, all stops. Everything stops. There is no replacement of martial law. And the only person that can live by law, martial law, is the one who actually instituted martial law. Well, he was murdered. So they had to turn around and mimic the system that we currently were living in as far as in America. And now we've been inducted in by birth certificates and social security numbers in this place that we call United States of America, which, by the way, is not a nation.
Okay. Our social security card, when did we start issuing social security numbers? Was it right after that?
During 1933, you start looking at again, when they removed the gold and the silver from the standard behind the money. Now, remember, you might remember this more than I do because you probably have seen some money circulating as a young child that said U.S. Treasury, like your quarters and your dimes and even some dollars. But you don't see that floating around anymore because the U.S. Treasury is not the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve is a whole different entity. It's a privatized entity. It's not even government. So all of this stuff that we've been issued have been from this privatized entity to replace the gold standard. And you and I have become the new gold and the new silver to bag up these paper notes or fiat currency that has no value. They had to give it some value. So what is the value? It's Nancy and myself and any other listener and viewer who may see this. You are collateral to this privatized entity that has not been able to pay its debts, which makes you on your best day an indentured servant. You are collateral. You are not free.
That just blows my mind. I mean, I know people that really don't understand the banking system are really, really confused now. What are the consequences of being an indentured servant, as you might say, and being collateral for the Federal Reserve Bank? What will that do to us?
And that's a great question. As you know, the United States, again, who's a business that's in the business for doing commerce. That's why they have a Dun & Bradstreet number. They have several. once again, but they're in the business of doing commerce. Well, they have been selling off this paper that you and I call money, that we fight over, that we've killed over, we've stole and everything else, not understanding it has absolutely no value. It only has perceived value. But they have been doing business with other nations, exports and imports, and they've used this paper money, to do business. And so, and they've created bonds in our names that they've traded on the New York Stock Exchange, like your birth certificate is a bond. It's not, if you look at your birth certificate and even your Social Security card, that's bond paper. That means you are an owner of something of value. So if you were to pay to buy stock in a company, let's say like a major, I won't say any names, but a major corporation or some business of some sort that's being traded publicly, if you buy in some shares of that company, they will issue you a bond certificate showing ownership that you've purchased and the value of that. Well, your birth certificate has that same meaning. It is a bond. Okay, so there's money attached to that. But here's the issue. All the money that they've been selling and all the business that they've been doing with this fiat currency, these other nations have found out that the currency is no good. So we have not been able to, and I keep saying we for the people can understand, for the sake of conversation and understanding, we have not been able to pay our debts as a nation. And again, remember, we're not a nation, but just for the conversation. So this nation has not been able to pay its debts. Now, the major players that have been giving money to this business called United States are Russia, China, and Japan, especially China owning a huge chunk of this great place in America. And so what's going to happen, just like any other business, when a business can't pay the banks back or the people that has loaned them the money to operate, what generally happens? They get foreclosed on. When they get foreclosed on, that particular company comes in or the bank comes in, seizes all assets that remain and inventory and collateral. So with that understanding, when China, Japan, and Russia foreclose on the U.S., which they're about to do, when they foreclose, they're going to seize all property and collateral attached to that, which means if you have a birth certificate or a Social Security number, you are collateral to that private business who have gotten foreclosed on and they have not been able to pay its debts.
So if they collateralize whatever they have because we didn't pay our debt to China, for instance, what does that mean to me as a person? Because I mean, I understand what you're saying, but for the audience out there, I mean, it's not us as a person that's collateral, it's what we own that's collateral, right? Or what we owe. Is that right? Is it our money at the bank?
You know what? Well, first of all, your money is about to be recalled anyway. Yeah.
Okay. That's a different subject.
It's a different subject, so that's a whole different thing. That money is about.
What happens when they collateralize that and we're the collateral? Like Nancy's the collateral. What happens to me?
Well, eventually, of course, you won't be able to use your money for anything because it's no good anymore, and that's about to come down the pike really soon. So, at some point, you're going to be ended up in one of these FEMA camps. If you there's a process that I've been speaking about. There's a process that you will need to go through, but until you go through that actual process, you will end up eventually in one of these FEMA camps, and we don't know what's going to happen to you at that point.
They can take our cars and our houses, right?
Yeah, they can take everything, your life, because they have you on paper. They own you.
Okay. Well, I know that's a little deep for most people, but one of your talks on Facebook Live is about the dollar collapsing and critical information to confirm the collapse of the dollar. So can you talk a little bit about that in as simple as terms as you can get? Because I mean, we're going pretty deep, and people really need to hear this because they hear it on the news. I mean, we all hear I mean, through the presidential campaigns last year, we heard all about China and how much we owe them and how they've devalued our money and all of that, but it didn't really sink in with everyone, I don't believe.
Yeah, you can Google this. If Google the Rothschild family, they have this past summer, they sold all of their assets out of the U.S. currency. Why would they do that? And they're the ones that instituted the currency. The whole centralized banking system, they sold their assets from it and they left. So you can actually Google that and find that information. So they're gone. So the powers that be are gone. So this system is already shut down. It's just like, and I like to preface by, or at least explain like this. And I alluded to it earlier, but I didn't finish. So when you got a business that's going, that's shutting down, you got these liquidators that come in. These liquidators come in and they sell off. They've purchased the assets that are in that particular store and the inventory, and they'll sell that inventory at a discounted rate. So they'll buy the business because that business is hurting, and they probably got it for pennies on the dollar. We probably say they probably got it for a dime on a dollar, and they'll turn around and liquidate it in the form of it going out of business sale. But the actual company, even though that company name is still up on the building, they're gone. The management has been replaced. Now the people are still, at the cash registers, because you still got to have business. They know the business. They know the how to flow. So they know that their time is limited, but they're still working. Hence the IRS. They were closed down back in 2014, late 2014. We are in 2017. People don't understand it's a new company that's doing the liquidating. It's called the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. They're liquidating right now, just like you would in a business who's gone out of business. They're gone, but we're still functioning. You can still use your money at the gas station. You can still buy food with it, but we are almost done with that. So you won't be able to use any of that any longer. I hope I'm not getting too deep. I'm trying to use it in some legal terms here.
Okay, Darren. So if the IRS went out of business and the International Monetary Fund took it over, why do we still have thousands of people that work for the IRS? Do they work for the International Monetary Fund now? Is it just something the government's hiding from us? Or, how do we know this? Of course, people have to verify. We want them to do that. So they can look
Absolutely.
up the IMF and the IRS and see all of that, and we want them to do that. But, if it all comes to fruition like you and I know it's going to do, the IRS is not going to be anymore. But you say in one of your talks about how we can get our taxes back because they got them fraudulently. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. The 5th and the 8th Circuit Court, you can Google that. Just this past May of this year, they ruled against the IRS, the first time in the history. They ruled against the IRS, saying that them taxing our wages has been illegal. They used two words, two negative words: illegal and fraudulent, for taxing our wages.
So we were talking the other night on one of your shows about how we could file to get our tax money back. And is that wise to try to do that now before the dollar totally collapses and the monetary fund takes over?
Well, I tell, when I'm dealing with issues of money and credit, credit is just, we're going to a new currency. It's going to be crypto, which is going to be based on electronic. So you might want to consider doing business on credit because we live in a system that's based on debits and credits. There is no money in our system. So you don't want to forget the cash, but you can do business in credit. And that's pretty much
what about our direct deposit that goes into the bank? That's considered cash on the bank's books, right?
It's supposed to be, but it's considered. But we are issued a credit ourselves. We don't.
Exactly.
They're not having any box with your cash in it. Like way back in the day. If you had money, a substantial amount of money, you can go to the vault, and they had, secret departments with your name on it and all that other stuff that you can get what you need to get out of. Them days been gone. We're in a different system now. It's just based on credits. You take these debt notes. That's why we call them a bill. $1 bill, $5 bill, $10 bill, $20 bill. Okay, that's the same thing as a light bill, a car bill, a house, your mortgage bill. They're all bill. What is a bill? It is something that is owed. So the fact that you have a TN of $20 or $50 or $100 in your hand is a sign that there is a debt that exists, and that money only exists from a loan that was made. Right. That's all. There's no real currencies that's being circulated in our system. The only true currency there is that we're not using on a regular basis right now is gold and silver. So yeah, you're right.
So when it all blows up and it all comes down to where I go to the bank and I stick my ATM card in to get $100 out to do whatever, I may not be able to get my money out. I may not be able to get $100 when it all comes down. But if I have gold and silver, I'll barter with gold and silver because that's what has the value. The dollar bill will not have the value that it needs to buy me $1 worth of supplies, right?
Absolutely. When the Federal Reserve shuts down, your money won't be any good. And then, like you said, you won't be able to do any commerce. You won't be able to make any trade or anything. I mean, you just ask the people in India, their money crashed, I think last year or earlier this year. Venezuela, I mean, they keep it out of the news. Their money crashed. I mean, those people are eating out of trash cans, and it is said, that they're eating domestic animals, just trying to stay alive. There's a lot that's going on in our world, and it's not the only place. And then they're not accepting our currency anymore outside of the United States because it's just paper. So even here, when it crashes here locally, you will not be able to go to the bank to get any of your money. The FDIC is also the Federal Reserve. So when the Federal Reserve shuts down, your FDIC shuts down, which means that your money would not be insured. So we've been trying to tell people to at least go to to a credit union because they're backed by a different.
So, okay. So if I have my direct deposit going into the bank and I go in and I take all the cash out at the first of the month and I stick that cash in a box under the bed like a lot of old timers do, still not going to be worth it because it's not going to be worth anything, right?
Right.
But if I take it out and put it in a federal credit union that's backed by the National Credit Union Administration instead of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which is the FDIC, because the NCUA is a stable fund that has 120% of every dollar that's in every credit union insured. So because of that, when the FDIC collapses, when the dollar collapses and the banks collapse, and then the International Monetary Fund takes over, our money will only still be real money and a real asset to us if it's in a federal credit union because it's still insured, right?
It's still insured, like you said, dollar for dollar. And I'm glad that you even used a specific amount. Of course, you are the professional in that department. I can't hold a candlestick to you in that area, but absolutely. And we're trying to, and I want to say this, and you know this as good as I do. Another place that has to cover 120% of your money is insurance. So exactly. to get you a good insurance policy, whole life, universal, something that has a cash value that you can hide your money in by law, those insurance companies also has to cover your money dollar for dollar. In fact, during the Great Depression, the insurance entity or industry was the only industry that did not go under. So anybody that had money in a cash value policy over there, they were still able to go get their money. So you might want to look at finding you look at your insurance and make sure that you use that to your advantage. You're going to hide your money in that and use that because it's tax deferred. You don't have to worry about the taxes. You can get as much money as you need to get, out of that without having to worry about taxes and stuff.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Goodness gracious. Okay. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit because I want to talk a little bit more about our Social Security cards and our Social Security numbers, okay? You've done a lot of talking about this, and really you get into preach mode when you start doing it, which I love because it really shows your passion and your knowledge of what you do. But tell us about our Social Security cards and how our Social Security numbers work and what they're worth and that kind of thing, because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, your Social Security card, if you look on the back of it, and I know you said you have yours, and it says, the first thing it says is this card belongs to the Social Security Administration. And if we ask for it, you must return it. So it's their card. All right. So you have to understand, it's their card. And just like if Miss Nancy has a car that she let me borrow for a little while, and at any time, even though that time, let's say she let me use it for a week, but I got it on Sunday, but by Tuesday, she's saying, Darren, I need my car back because my other car had a flat, so I'm sorry, I need to get my car back. I can't tell her it's my car until Friday because you gave me a week. It is her car, so I got to give it back to her. So everything that's attached to that car is also hers. If I rob a bank, they're going to be looking for the car owner, the owner of that car. They're going to come to Miss Nancy's house, and she's going to have to give an explanation of why I'm in this car. You have absolutely nothing to do with what I did. So whoever owns the car also owns the debt that's attached to that card, if that makes sense. So you got to look at it from this aspect. Now, if I was a traveling, and I'm going to use you, Ms. Nancy, if you were a traveling salesperson, and with the job came certain things such as a company card, I will also issue you a company credit card so that you can pay for the fuel so that you can continue to go out and make your sales for the company. Now, so you can use this card as many times as you need to, as long as you put it in the company card. Now, at the end of the month, you've been signing it off on the receipts and all that. But at the end of the month, the bill doesn't come to your house. Even though you were the authorized agent, you do not own the card. So the money goes back to the owner of the card, which would be me because I own the company. You are my authorized agent, but I own the company. So I'm the one that is liable for the debts that you create. Same is the system that we've been inducted. Your card is a Social Security card. You are the authorized agent. The back of the card just told you who owns the card, so that makes you an authorized agent of the card, and you have a number that you use so that we can identify which person is using and creating the debts that we owe, not you the agent, but that the company owes, and they know who actually created these debts.
Okay, that brings up a whole nother thing. Now, because we have to use the Social Security card, a number, to get debt, to get loans, to get a credit card, to get anything, does that mean we don't owe that debt personally because we don't own that card and we don't own the Social Security number because it's attached to the card?
Your Social Security card has two meanings. On the front side of it, where it says Social Security card and it has your name and it has the Social Security number on it, that's the public side. On the back side of that card, you look in the lower right-hand corner, you see a series of numbers, and in front of those numbers, you'll see a letter. What's your letter?
E.
E. If I remember correctly, and I could be mistaken, I want to say that's Chicago. So your bank is attached. That letter E stands for one of the 12 banks. There's 12 letters to recognize 12 reserve banks that are in the U.S. Mine is F. Mine is down in Atlanta. Okay, so my bank is the Federal Reserve of Atlanta. I want to say yours is Chicago. I could be wrong on that, but you can also go and you can Google Federal Reserve Bank, and it'll give you those letters. So on the back side of the card is the private side. So what we're doing is trying to teach people how to operate on the private side. As long as you're on the public side, the debt is on the backs of the people. That's why we're called the enemy of the states. The debt is on the back of the people. So if you're operating on the public side, yes, that's your debt. Why? Because you have consented to a contract that you didn't know you was entering into, which means that all of this stuff is fraudulent because they contracted with you before you even knew who your mama was. that you entered into a contract, okay? Again, illegally. So they forced you to operate on the public side, but through due process paperwork that you can fill out, you can learn to operate on the private side, and then you can release the debts and you can operate as the creditor. Now, technically, we are all creditors because there's no money in our system. But when you do not know how to operate on the private side, which is on the back side of that Social Security card, then you're going to always operate on the public side, which means that yes, you owe that debt, unless you do not consent. But you got to know the process.
Okay, so there is a process to use the private side of my Social Security card, which is the side that says it belongs to the Social Security, and here's the little number on the bottom. Now, my husband and I, our cards were issued in the same state. We lived in Florida. Our parents applied for our Social Security cards, our Social Security numbers. We got these cards. His has an F in front, and mine has an E in front.
Yeah, he's in Atlanta with me. Yeah.
So that kind of proves a little bit about what you're saying, Darren, because we're only 2 years difference in age. Our parents probably ordered these cards at the same time, similar to the same time. His is from F and mine is from E. So
right.
Why would that be when we're in the state of Florida and that's where we were when our card was issued?
It's random. I don't know the rhyme or reason why. That would be, but my sister was born in Arkansas. My sister and brother were born in Arkansas. I was born in Maine. My dad was in the military. So mine is F, hers is F. I don't remember what my brother's was. So I honestly have never researched why it would be like that, but I just know
that's immaterial anyway. But if we start dealing on the private side, there are processes that we can go through that debts that we think we owe, really the bank, the bank owns the debt, right? Because of the private side of Social Security, or Social Security Administration owns it.
Right.
Okay.
Right. It's all of that debt, but because we've been made to believe that we are the debtors in this system that we're currently operating in, then a lot of us, we feel we're stretched out. We are working 2 and 3 jobs, long hours, the whole nine, and of course that's led us to be sick. That's why the Bible says that it's impossible to please man, mammal. Now that mammal, it was talking about the system of man. See, we've been inducted in a system that are by men who are trying to be gods here on earth. Now we're all created in God's image. We all are gods. And I don't want to say these other names because I really take over the whole show. But these are heartless, spiritualists, in terms of having no convictions of God, whatsoever. And it's why they do what they've done to us, as people. And again, when I say us, I'm talking about you and I. People, we're all of different shades, different ethnicities, has nothing to do with color, has everything to do with classism.
Wow, it's really an interesting topic. You do say in some of your conferences that you've had that we are creditors, not debtors.
We are creditors. We are creditors. In fact, you are the one that should release the debt. And let me give you a good example. When you buy a house, let's go. That home, first of all, let me say this. It's against the law for banks to loan money. So we got to understand that. Banks don't have money to loan. But we are coerced to go to the bank to get money all the time, right? And I know people are like, huh? Yeah, y'all can Google that. That's even in the bank bylaws of these that governs these banks. They cannot loan money. They don't have money to loan. So how do they get money? Well, they get money off of you and I, Miss Nancy. You and I, they need our signature because our signature is the gold and the silver in this centralized banking system. So we create the money. We are the money. Without us, there is no commerce. We are the gold. We are the silver. So let's use a $200,000 house. You buy a $200,000 home. You go to the closing table. You sit across from the closing attorney, and the closing attorney is shoving papers in front of you, and they're saying, okay, well, this just means this, and you sign, and then this just means this, and you sign. So once you get through that big stack of papers, like that, and then they say, all right, Miss Nancy, here go your keys, and you're celebrating, you're happy. We're gone, we're ready to have our home warming party and all this other stuff, and which is fine, all that's good. But on day 2, they go to your TDA, because what you don't know is that you gave them the power of attorney. Some people, we call it TDA or your DTC. TDA meaning trust depository account. DTC means your depository trust company. So that manages our trust. The trust that's been created in our names through our birth certificates and our social security numbers, which are worth hundreds and hundreds of millions. In some case, some of us, you probably are worth $5, $6, $7 billion, Ms. Nancy. So that's a whole nother conversation. But they'll go to your TDA and they'll go to the window and they'll show the signed document that they have to access your money. They get that money out, which is at $200,000. They do fractional banking with it, which is in multiples of 10, and that creates a $2 million bond. Out of that $2 million bond, they take the $200,000 back, and they sell the the $2 million bond on the New York Stock Exchange. Okay, and now you got a company or some foreign entity sees this $2 million bond that has a 30-year maturity date on it, which you are being held collateral to for a debt that you didn't even create. In fact, you the one that had the money that they used to make this $2 million bond that they just made $500,000 off of, who was going to, sit on it for 30 years so they can, have access to that $2 million and they can cash in on it. They're going to make you reliable or responsible to that debt, so you become the collateral of your own money that you actually gave them permission to have access to. Then they're going to charge you an interest on your own money that you don't even owe. Yeah, you follow me? So in this whole transaction, you were the creditor. You were never the debtor. You credited everything, but never borrowed anything. Ask them for everybody that's listening, you can just send this information to your mortgage company. I would like to see the final forensic audit trail to this transaction of when I purchased this home. They can't show you. They're going to give you some print screen information off the computer and show you when you've made payments. That is not a final forensic audit trail.
Okay, so by a forensic audit trail, it would be like the check that they wrote for $200,000 to me.
Right.
This debt.
Right. They need. So I need to see a
check to me.
They didn't give you a $200,000 check.
No.
Right. Because they never loaned you anything.
Wow.
Ever.
Amazing. It's overwhelming. But there is a lot of knowledge that we all need to gain, and we need to take advantage of this, because if the FDIC, well, when the FDIC collapses, and when the International Monetary Fund takes over everything, then even our collateral is no good either. I mean, we're not going to have houses, we're not going to have cars, we're not going to have food, we're not going to have grocery stores, we're not going to have any dollars to buy anything with. So why do we continue to spend all our money paying for it? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. So you got to start operating on the private side, and you can use this paper and go buy you some gold and some silver, so you can get you some ammunition for your bullets. I mean, for your guns and things of that nature, so you can have something to trade with in the near future, because that's what it's coming down to. For so long, I thought we call them extremists. The people that are out, they living on the land, they have all types of food stored up, and they have these underground bunkers and all types of, we call them extremists, but they knew something that a lot of us didn't know. Now, I'm 49, and it took all these years, but the Lord told me 3 years ago that I needed to prepare my ark of safety. He told me that, and I really didn't understand all until as I begin to go down this rabbit hole, I begin to understand what he meant. So yes, ma'am.
Yeah, none of us can hardly understand it because we've been so brainwashed all our life. We've been so
all
brainwashed and so intimidated by the government and Federal Reserve and everything, all of that about our money, and so no one could ever believe. And plus, we still have that concept of too big to fail too. Millions of people believe that the United States of America is too big to fail. And like you said, the United States of America is a company. It can fail. Now, America can't. If the power of the people get together, America would be fine.
America is in great standings, and like you said, that company has failed miserably. The nation, the world around us, all the 197 nations have caught on to it, and nobody wants to do business with it. The last, I guess it was about a month ago, the Venezuela, they kicked the U.S. dollar to the side. It was called the petrodollar, and they took on the yen now. So if you want to do business with Venezuela, who has the world's largest oil reserves, by the way, you have to do business through Chinese yen, which is like $3.70 something cents to our one. I mean, it's some outrageous amount of money, and other currency that are doing far better than the U.S., currently right now. But the whole centralized banking system on the earth is about to go away, and there's going to be a whole lot of people who are not prepared for it. Now, I'm a Jesus kid, and I know a lot of folks say, well, the Lord's going to take care of me. And I tell people this all the time. If the Lord, with his good self and his perfect self, we know he's good and he's perfect, he's great, and he's all-knowing, he allowed us to be put into this system by the powers that be. He allowed us to be enslaved. Is he not good enough to get us out? Is he not good enough to give us a remedy to cure this disease that we've been issued of all this stuff, the foods that we eat, the money that we don't have, how they, like you was talking about earlier, how they treat us with our credit, where everything is by credit. And the only reason why they do that is because they can charge us more money, which means that they can issue greater bonds in your name. That's all. They have enough. They have a right to say, well, you're a high risk, so we're going to charge you more money, and that just means that they can create bigger bonds. That's all. It's all about commerce. This whole life that we've been forced to live is a lie.
And then the founders of the United States of America and the banking system, they've become multi-billionaires, turned all of their money into gold and silver and haul buggy. So now they've got plenty of collateral. They're not going to be hurting at all, just like the Rothschilds. But then the normal people like us out here. So all I'm saying is that maybe we should research this and listen to what Darren is saying and try to at least start researching and start purchasing some gold and silver. I mean, just think, if we did not have to make our mortgage payment for some reason because we're going to be working on the private side of our Social Security, then that may be, $500 to $1,000 a month we could use just buy gold and silver. And that's what we got to start thinking about. We got to start thinking about some alternative money, you might say, to have where we can barter and collateral and live. Because unless God writes Ichabod on our whole world, which will happen one day, then we are expected to take heed and listen when God's speaking to us. So, yeah, absolutely. I think I have one more question, Darren. I wanted you to talk a little bit about these 1099 A, B's, and C's, and the OIDs. If you can talk just a little bit about that, because we're run over our time, but what we're going to do, Darren, is we're going to make this 2 shows, and we're going to air it at separate times, so we'll be able to get all this information out to people. But can you talk just a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 minutes on the OIDs and what they are and what they mean?
Yeah, 1099 OIDs are used to be refunded the taxes that you actually spend and pay. In fact, I was talking to a guy. I just met a guy who he's a doctor. I won't say his name for privacy reasons. Man, he was a great connect, and it's all because that he heard about me doing what I was doing, and he valued the things that I was saying, so he began to share some information with me, and he was able to, using the process of the 1099 OID, he owed $40,000 in taxes at the beginning of this year, and he did what we call a for V, which means you can look that up. It's the A, number 4, and V. A for V is an acronym for acceptable value. So there's a process that you can do to turn your bill statements that you get in the mail, like your light bill, your insurance, your phone bill, your car note. All these are really money orders if you understand how to fill them out. And then the taxes that you're being charged for any of these services, you'll fill out a 1099 OID, and they'll actually refund you the taxes that you're spending. He was able to write off $40,000 in taxes that he was owed just this year. So when you learn how to use these documents, but again, you have to study and get this information. You just can't listen to somebody like me and just be like, oh, I'm gonna go get a 1099 OID and try to do it. No, you need to go back and look at the HJR 192 is a good place to start, so you can really understand that IRS is really not your enemy. The IRS, the way they were created, is really for our benefit if we learn to operate on the private side. See, that gentleman understood the difference between the public and the private. And when you operate on the private side, then you can actually use this information to your benefit, because they have it there for our benefit, because it was against the law. Since when slavery was abolished, they couldn't put us back in slavery again, but they had to do it in a different way that we would not catch on. And again, this has nothing to do with color. It has everything to do with classism and status correction. So with him operating in his corrected status, he was able to operate on the private side and eliminate that debt. So 1099 OID, y'all might want to look at that. You might want to look up 1040B as well, because this is stuff that little easy documents that you can fill out and you can submit, and you can get refunds on taxes. That, like the receipts that when you go to McDonald's, you go to Burger King, you go to Applebee's, you go out to dinner or wherever that you go, Walmart, Walgreens, and you have these receipts that show you how much you spent, and then they have the tax amount. Well, if you save those receipts and you can submit a 1099 OID with that, you get the refund from the taxes that you actually spent.
Wow, Darren. Well, you know, all of this, this show has been so informative, and I want to give a plug for WYTV7. WYTV7 is a non-profit, okay? It's a 501c3. We do take donations, and that's how we use the donations to promote our shows and to get them in the international marketplace so people can hear this vital information that we give and that we do on all of the broadcasters do on their interviews, because this is very important information that we all need to just say. And I know it's been quick. I know Darren's given us a lot of information, but hopefully you took notes. And if you didn't, then when you listen to the show, take your notes and do your own research and check things. This is real talk, real stuff that you need to be aware of, because all Darren wants to do and all I want to do is just help people understand what's coming down the tubes and what's coming down on us, so we won't be so shocked. And but again, I'm so grateful for WYTV7 for allowing me to have my radio show, Shine Your Light. In turn, I can have beautiful, wonderful guests like Darren Tate, who has a lot of information to share. So I'm going to, getting ready to sign off. And we'll be airing the show. But Darren, I thank you again for your time. I thank you for your knowledge. And I just thank you for being a beautiful person that wants to share and help people, which is exactly what I like to do. And again, if you would like to give a donation to WYTV7, you can go on their website or on their Facebook and hit the donate button and make a donation. Even a $5 donation gives us a lot of money that we can use to boost these sales, to boost these shows, and that we use it strictly for getting our shows out there in front of people, because they're so vitally important. So anyway, without further ado, please hook up with Darren Tate if you're interested in what we're saying and interested in, he has a lot of videos on his Facebook account, and it is DarrenTate. So if you will look him up, and he's in Memphis, Tennessee, so you'll know you've found the right one, and just listen to his videos. And a lot of times I share his videos on my Facebook too, because we really want to get the word out. So I thank you so much again, Darren, and I appreciate your time. And without further ado, we'll sign off for now, and I'll have you on again when I get more information, okay?
Okay, sounds great. Thank you very much. Love you, honey.
Thank you, Darren.
Yeah.